My name is Adam Magallanes, and today I'm going to be talking about queerness in modern horror. Queerness in horror shows up both in positive and negative ways. In older horror movies, queerness is often portrayed in a negative light as a way to show the eccentricities and weirdness of the film's villains. For example, the film Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, released in 1960, tells the story of a woman staying in the Bates Hotel who was killed by the owner of the hotel, Norman Bates. Throughout the movie, Norman references his mother who lives in the house down the road who is unwell, and the movie wants you to believe the mother is the killer. It is later revealed in the movie that Norman is actually the killer and his mother has been dead for a long time, with characters in the movie discovering her decaying body in the house. Norman has been dressing up as his mother to commit crimes, and in his deranged mind, it is not him doing the murders but his mother. This is an example of a negative portraying of queerness in older horror movies, as this can be interpreted as Norman being trans or enjoying dressing in drag, as he feels more comfortable in women's clothes. It is clear that Norman is mentally ill, and can be interpreted that dressing like a woman or feeling more comfortable as a woman is part of that mental illness, which can be offensive to the trans or drag communities. However, whether or not Hitchcock was trying to portray trans culture is still up for debate, as trans culture and issues were not part of mainstream culture as they are now. Another example of the negative portrayal is in the film Silence of the Lambs by Jonathan Demme, released in 1991. Another negative portrayal of trans people is portrayed by the film's main villain, Buffalo Bill. Buffalo Bill is a serial killer who kidnaps women and puts them in a pit in his basement to kill. He does to women so he can steal their skin and wear it in his attempt to become a woman. Buffalo Bill is a character who suffers from gender dysmorphia, as seen many times in movies, specifically during his erotic dance scene in which he puts eyeliner and lipstick on and pushes his genitals behind his legs to simulate a vagina. However, it is said by the writer of the Silence of the Lambs book that Bill is not trans. He essentially kills women to be a woman, but according to Stacey Henley, that this is actually really hard to separate from transness. And in fact, many people in the queer community protested the film during that year's Oscars. The movie was seen as an attack on LGBT community as a whole during the time, not specifically trans people, as they were only a niche part of that community during that era. According to Stacey Henley, rewatching it decades later is with the new context that the transness at the heart of the film becomes apparent. Both Psycho and Silence of the Lambs aren't focused on trans culture, but rather perpetuating the stereotype that there is something wrong with trans people, as the men who dress up and act as women, according to Stacey Henley, always act clumsily, manly, ungainly, and generally hamming the situation up for laughs while tottering around in heels. The message is plain and simple in these movies that dressing like a woman equals that dude is crazy. In modern horror movies, queerness is more commonplace and is treated with more respect as societies become more accepting of the queer and trans community. For example, in the film Midsummer, directed by Ari Aster and released in 2019, it tells the story of a group of friends who go to a commune in Sweden and find out that their culture is a lot more weirder than they expected. The main character, Danny, is the sole girl in the group and is only invited by her boyfriend after suffering a family tragedy. She constantly feels isolated and left out during the trip, in part because her boyfriend has been wanting to break up with her for a while. Emily St. James, the author of the article Midsummer as a Deeply Trans Narrative Hiding in Plain Sight, argues that the isolation that Danny feels can be equated to how trans people feel when they're with people who don't understand them and don't accept them for they are. When Danny goes to Sweden, she feels welcomed by the community as one of their own, and this equates to when trans people transition to the gender that they feel comfortable with, and they're around people who accept them for who they are. But without all the murder and weird sex traditions of a Swedish commune. When I watched the film in 2019 when it first came out, I didn't really notice these parallels. As a straight white man, this didn't really apply to me. But in rewatching the movie, after rereading the article, I can kind of see the parallels that St. James is trying to draw. But I more equated it to a breakup movie after going through a breakup myself. But that's what the beauty of art and movies are. People are able to relate their own problems and issues in the movies to help themselves and identify with these characters. It's great that people can see themselves and see their problems in these movies. That's beauty about art. You're able to interpret it in many different ways besides what the author or the creator is trying to do. And I think it's great that movies nowadays are bringing queer and trans issues in the mainstream and allowing people of the LGBT community to identify themselves with these characters without having to relate to a mentally deranged serial killer. So I think this is a great advantage of bringing queerness into modern horror, and I think as time goes on, we can see it in movies from the 1960s with Psycho. We can see that we've come a long way from those interpretations of queer and trans people, and movies are constantly getting better with these interpretations of the LGBT community. And the disadvantages of that is that but that's the disadvantage of it too. Back then, people didn't really understand the queer and trans community, so the portrayals of these characters was often like in a negative light. But as time goes on, we get better at it, and in the future we'll have like these great queer and trans characters that people in the LGBT community can relate to and identify themselves and be part of the film community. I think that's great for everyone that we're able to see ourselves in these characters and relate to them.